Hey everyone. Okay, does your child have a hard time following instructions? Do they have a hard time remembering? Do they have a hard time following like a series of instructions, whether it's something the teacher said, whether it's something in instructions that you've given them? Do they have a hard time sequencing things? A lot of the times we might think that this is just a normal part of kids that are kind of scatterbrained, they can't remember stuff, and that is absolutely true. Kids' brains are still totally developing, and it's not something that, kids are not going to have the organized brains that adults have, and even adults struggle with these things. But if this is something that is really impacting your child's ability to learn, to focus, to carry out daily tasks, to, just to function and be successful in school, and so forth, then they might have auditory processing disorder, or they might have auditory processing difficulties or issues. And I say that because sometimes these kids don't, meet all the markers for a diagnosis, but they definitely have weak connections in relation to in the auditory cortex, or just, the auditory nerve, or something is going on. And there's all kinds of reasons for that. And I'm going to be talking more about that on this Thursday at 12 p.m. Eastern in my free training. But I just wanted to quickly take a couple minutes and go through the list of, if your child has dyslexia, they very likely have auditory processing issues as well. The two tend to really go hand in hand because it's the auditory cortex that is largely responsible for the phonological awareness that we often don't see, right? That's the main defining factor with dyslexia. If they say huh or what a lot, even if you're like right there, they know they heard you, they heard you for sure. It's not that they didn't hear you, but it's not really going in, or they need more time to process information. Those are all signs that the auditory system in the brain is slightly off. The other thing is if they have a hard time like filtering background noise, if the auditory cortex is off, or there's glitches in that system, that can be a factor as well, and that can contribute to poor focus, being easily distracted, all of that type of information. And these are the kids that will totally mix up information. So maybe the teacher said, taught something in a certain way, or maybe you did, and they're just jumbling information, or they're leaving parts out, or they're totally misinterpreting information. That's also a sign of auditory processing issues. Memory is huge, it just doesn't go in for them to even retain it. And just the other thing too is it can affect behavior. So I mentioned distraction, I mentioned poor focus, but it can also impact, like, these are the kids that just like might blurt out info, like the filter is not there as well. And when it comes to, like, say, reading, not only is it issues with phonological processing and blending sounds and all of that type of stuff, but they often will have poor reading comprehension. Because not only are they working so hard to decode and blend sounds that they're not able to retain, but the memory piece is affected as well. And then because it's the auditory memory, right? We have different types of memory, auditory, visual, and so forth. And in general, poor auditory processing, if it's severe enough, can even affect language in terms of language delays, whether it's speech problems, not speaking till a later age. It can even impact social interactions. I've worked with a lot of parents where they tell me that their child is more social now. After we've done the brain training, the nutrition, the brain training, the technology, the sound frequency therapy, all of that type of stuff, they can't believe that what they thought was just the personality of their child to be mumblers, to be withdrawn, to be quiet, that they're not actually quiet or withdrawn or mumblers. They're just, they had such a hard time expressing themselves. There was this auditory processing weakness, disorder, glitch, whatever, variation or severity it was. And all of a sudden they just open up. That was a really incredible story. 13-year-old boy I worked with. He was just really quiet. I thought he was really quiet too. We were working with him for dyspraxia and dysgraphia, so, clumsiness, writing issues, and so forth. And when we did the sound frequency therapy, mom could not believe how much he improved in terms of his just socializing. She's like, it's like he comes home, he tells us about the day, he shares all kinds of things, he speaks clearly. It's not like one or two word answers. when these kids struggle with auditory processing disorder, when it's severe enough, then social expression or expressing themselves can be really difficult too. And that obviously is going to impact their, skills in school as well as participating in class and so forth. So I wanted to just pop on real quick, run through the list of what auditory processing, I say disorder, but also glitches. Keep that in mind. Not every kid meets the, threshold, if you will, to get an actual diagnosis of it being a disorder. It could be just a dysfunction, it could be just mild, it could be a glitch. And these are sometimes the kids who are most at risk of slipping through the cracks because people do not realize that they have an actual problem. They just think they need to pay attention more, they need to smarten up, they, need to do all these things, start writing stuff down. And all of these things, like IEPs, tutoring, I say this all the time, can be super helpful. I'm not against them, but if there is a glitch or a disorder or dysfunction, if there's a weakness in the brain, why are we not addressing that? Why are we not correcting that when we know we can strengthen those connections and improve them, as opposed to relying on this kind of crutch that isn't necessarily going to take them all the way through in terms of them being able to thrive? Because what happens is life gets harder, work gets harder, school gets harder as they go into the higher grades. And all of a sudden, those crutches really start to become more challenging to use as something to rely on. So that's it, everyone. As I mentioned, I'm doing a training, free training, Thursday, 12 p.m. Eastern in my Facebook group, Building Better Brains. Join me there. And I will be talking more about auditory processing disorder, how to recognize it, and how it really affects learning difficulties and ADHD. It's a huge piece of the puzzle, so you won't want to miss that. So thanks for watching, and share if you know anybody else who can benefit.